Hi tappers! Today I want to quantify how you can know if tapping will be effective for you or for you in a particular circumstance. In order to answer this question, we need to ask, what is tapping working to be effective on? Bad stuff, right? And we call that bad stuff trauma, but do you really know what trauma means or where the line between trauma and bad experience is? Let's define that. Trauma has been characterized as occurring when one of the four following criteria are met. You perceive that your life has been threatened. You feel overwhelmed to the point of hopelessness. You feel isolated or all alone. Or your expectation of someone is violated. When one or more of these tripwires are triggered, the physical trauma response in the body kicks in. And that will be another conversation, so let's stop on that and let's follow that tapping helps trauma, which is when we have an experience that we feel our lives are threatened, we feel hopeless, we feel alone, or we feel violated. So, if what you are wanting to resolve has one or more of those elements, tapping will help. But let's caveat this. Let's say you are angry with an inflammatory coworker. You've tapped on just about the coworker and you don't feel any better. Does this mean that because it's not a trauma, tapping won't help? Not necessarily. Harvard University did a study and discovered that the vast majority of people were first traumatized by age 4. I'll go more in depth on that later, but what I want to pull from that is that trauma will set roots in the brain, and if it isn't dealt with, it will grow and begin to branch and begin to pull other life experiences into it. So your coworker may be what's currently on fire, but it's a branch, not a root. So often in tapping, what it's really about is miles away from where you start. Not that where you start isn't applicable, it's the beginning of the tunnel. But know that where you go with it may become a different experience, and following that is important for EFT to be effective. Knowing how to do that takes practice and some skill, which is why working with a certified clinical EFT practitioner makes sense, at least for a few times, so you can get down the basic pattern of how a session unfolds. Especially since our criteria for trauma at 4 is very different than what our criteria for trauma is now. Your obnoxious coworker might trigger the trauma of you wanting to snuggle with your mom, but maybe she ignored you because she was listening to her flamboyant friend tell a long story and you felt vulnerable in that moment. And your mom ignoring you made you feel all alone and perhaps violated your expectations that she didn't prioritize you. Perhaps you decided that that meant you don't matter. So now, every time this other person invades your life, you feel that deep pain and a need to defend or protect yourself from them because this all feels familiar. And your brain is protecting you from having to go through the pain of that trauma again. It doesn't have to make logical sense, and it often doesn't. So trusting where it goes is important, and knowing that if something is on fire, but it itself isn't categorized as a trauma, it's connected to something deeper that is. So, will EFT be effective for you? Now that you have these guidelines, what do you think? I'll share some quick numbers with you. These come from a meta-analysis of 7 randomized control trials of tapping for PTSD, which is what we call unresolved trauma. By using a scale where 0.5 is a moderate effect and 0.8 is a large effect, so only 0.3 difference between a moderate and a large effect, EFT treatment scored an effect of 2.96, nearly 400% of what is needed to be largely effective. Randomized control is considered the gold standard of clinical trials, and metadata means that it's scrutinized across the span of 7 different trials, so no one of them can claim effectivity if the others don't support it. So I am 400% confident that EFT is likely to be highly effective for you too. I'll see you again soon.